Hi everyone, this is Sean Ismail from the Cloud Ranger, and you are viewing the Microsoft Azure training. Today our session 5 is actually on the Azure PowerShell basics. The reason I say basics is because there is just so much in PowerShell, and especially for Azure, that there is not going to be one single session that is going to include the entire Azure PowerShell. So the goal of my session here today is actually to get you started with PowerShell, Azure PowerShell, where you should be able to download the modules for Azure PowerShell, install it, and use your Azure PowerShell console to connect to the subscription you have and basically run some basic commands. I'm going to show you two basic ways of connecting to your subscription from the PowerShell, and we're not going to get into too much details of commandlets or specific services. I'm going to have a couple of examples for you to follow along, for you to understand that how PowerShell can be used to access those services. Initially, I thought I was going to go in the background offline and install a couple of services and configure them so we can use PowerShell to actually do something in the subscription. If you remember our previous sessions, we have always deleted everything after we were done end of the session to ensure everything was clean for the next session to start. So I thought that first that I'm going to do this offline, but then I realized that a lot of you will probably want to follow along as this session goes. And if you do not have any idea on how to get services configured or started or created in Azure, because we have not covered that and you're just following from the start, then that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So we are actually going to go to my client computer, log into my subscription, and you can do the same as well. Log into your subscriptions from the management portal and actually create a couple of services that we can interact with from PowerShell later on. So let's get to the client computer browser. So here we are at a browser on my client computer, and the site that we want to go to is azure.microsoft.com. You can go there and go to my account and log in, or you can always go to manage.windowsazure.com and log in as well. It will just take you directly to your subscription. Here I have already been here, so it's actually providing me that information. Either way, as you know from our last session, that you can log into your subscription. So we're going to log into the subscription now. I'm going to do a couple of things here once the management portal loads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a storage account similar to what we had created in our last session. It's going to be almost exactly like that actually. So I'm going to go to storage over here and create a storage account. It brings up the menu and comes to quick create. You have to provide a unique name over here. So I'm going to just put Cloud Ranger 5000. Obviously, the name you're going to put over here is going to be different from mine. Your location and your affinity group is going to be obviously different than mine. I'm going to use East US2. You can put any one of the regions here that's close to you. I'm going to make this locally redundant for our purpose here and create the storage account. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create a virtual machine, and I'm going to do a quick create once again. I'm going to call it Cloud Ranger VM1. Put in some credentials. We are actually not going to log into this VM or do anything with this VM today in our demo, but it's just a couple of objects that I want to create that will be used for our PowerShell. As you can see, it's actually doing its work right now. You can minimize that or you can just leave that open. So we're going to let this happen in the background because creating the virtual machine actually does take some time. So do not be alarmed if the status over here says starting for a while. What I'm going to do is obviously let this run, and we're going to go back to the slides and have a brief discussion about Azure PowerShell. Okay, we are back to our slides now. So let's get started. Azure PowerShell pretty much can do everything that the management portal can do, in fact, a little bit more. And we'll explain that in subsequent sessions when we get into more services, how it can do some things more that you can only perhaps do from PowerShell and not from the management portal. But for our purposes here, everything that you are doing in management portal can be done with PowerShell. And the way it works is that if you recall that I'm using 8.1 for my client computer. I do not know what you are using, but Windows PowerShell comes built in most client operating systems these days. However, by default, it does not have the Azure PowerShell modules to run the Azure commandlets. So you'll actually have to download the PowerShell modules that we are going to do shortly, and you'll have to load those modules, and that's how you'll have access to the Azure commandlets from PowerShell. So once you install this, you'll see that installing the modules will also install a customized console for Azure PowerShell. If you have worked with Microsoft Exchange before or SharePoint before, you know that they actually have their consoles, which are nothing but PowerShell consoles, but the modules already preloaded in there. So let's go to our client computer and go through the installation of Azure PowerShell so you can have the Azure PowerShell console up and running, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to go to our client computer now. As you can see, it's still creating the virtual machine. It's not done yet. So the first thing we are going to do is go to azure.microsoft.com, and we are going to go to downloads here on the top. And if you scroll down a little bit under the command line tools, what we are looking for is the Windows PowerShell install. So we're going to click on that, and we are going to download this executable file. And I'm going to download this directly on my desktop here. It's a very small file. It doesn't take too long at all to install that. What this is, it's actually called the Microsoft Web Platform Installer. If you have worked with IIS before, you can see these days it basically asks to, it installs to actually get other components. So it's no different here as well. It actually chooses the stuff that needs to install directly, so you don't have to do anything here besides clicking on install. And you accept that. So right now it goes and it downloads a bunch of stuff, and once the installation completes, it will show you all the stuff it has installed, downloaded and installed actually. I'm going to pause here a little bit right now just for it to go ahead and do that. It's pretty straightforward, and it will not really require any input from you. It will just get to the finish. Here we can see our virtual machine is actually getting created right now. It is still running. So I'm going to pause here and return back once this installation has been completed. Okay, that installation took about, I don't know, 45 seconds or 50 seconds. But as you can see in the background, this installation, Web Platform Installer, actually went and downloaded all of this stuff and installed that. And you can see Microsoft Azure PowerShell Standalone was actually part of it. So we're going to click Finish here, and that actually concludes our installation. Exit over here. So if you recall from our slide, I mentioned that once you install these modules, what it does, it actually goes and installs a PowerShell as Microsoft Azure PowerShell as well. As you can see, it's already on my start menu over here. I'm going to just go ahead and run this as an administrator. This is no different from a regular PowerShell console, except that this actually has the commandlets loaded for Azure. So I'm going to clear the screen over here. Now that we have installed this, we are going to go to our slides and talk a little bit about connecting to the subscriptions. So there are two ways to access a subscription from PowerShell or Azure PowerShell. If you recall from this training sessions here that the most important thing for your account would be the subscription, because all your Azure cloud services are under an umbrella of a subscription. So the only way to actually consume the resources is through a subscription. So when we installed Azure PowerShell a moment ago, what happened was that you just installed the commandlets to get Windows Azure PowerShell up and running. This console or this PowerShell console, it is completely it's completely oblivious of any subscription information you have or anyone could have. So the idea is that you want to go to Azure PowerShell and connect to your account or your subscription to perform functions on that subscription. And there are really two methods to do that. The traditional method that has been around for a little while is the management certificate, where you actually go and download a publish setting file or the publishing profile of your subscription, and you download a little file which has that information and you import it to Windows PowerShell, and then PowerShell knows which subscription it is connected to. And the second method is actually signing into Azure with your Microsoft account or organizational account and having access to subscription in that way. Both ways are almost similar, except that there are subtle differences with commandlets that is available to only signing into Azure with your Microsoft or organizational account, and it's not there for your management certificate. We'll definitely get into details of that in a bit here. What I want to do right now is actually demonstrate both ways to connect to the same subscription and then get into the details of the differences. And once we have sorted that, then we are going to go and run some commandlets on the actual services that we have created, like the virtual machine and the storage account. So the first one we are going to do right now is use the management certificate. So we are going to go back to our client computer here, and we have left it the way it is. So let's go ahead and see over here. I think, as you can see, my virtual machine was created, the account was created as well. So we're going to leave this the way it is. I'm going to close this tab. Let's actually come to the Microsoft Azure PowerShell console here. The first commandlet I'm going to run is actually to get the publish setting file or the publishing profile from our account. And the commandlet for that is get Azure publish, and I'm going to use my tab here to get that. So you just have to type this commandlet and press enter. It will go and fire up your browser, and as you can see, it's trying to download the credentials file. You might be prompted, based on if you actually are signed into your subscription or not, you will be prompted to provide your credentials. Since we are already logged in, it just went and downloaded the publish setting file. So the name basically is the subscription name, and the extension is publish settings. And what we are going to do is we are going to save this file on our computer somewhere. I think I'm going to just put this in my temp folder here, and it's just a regular file, as you can see, with the extension publish settings. I'm going to open this real quick in Notepad and show the content of this file. As you can see, it has your subscription ID, and it actually has a management certificate in there. And we're going to import this in PowerShell, and PowerShell, once you import the certificate, will know the subscription that it's connected to and only use that subscription. So the way we are going to do that here is, now that we know what the publish setting file is, we are going to import it to the Azure PowerShell here. So the commandlet for that is import-azure publish settings file, and you have to let this commandlet know where it is. So I know it's in the temp folder, and I'm going to use my tab again to auto-complete that and choose that publish setting file. I'm hit enter over there. And as you can see, it provides some information on the subscription now your Windows Azure PowerShell is connected to. So we can match the ID here. So as you can see, this is the ID of the subscription. So if we go and we know how to find that, go to settings here, and you can see the subscription is the free trial, and this is the subscription ID 5B whatever B3. So you can see it's 5B and all that B3. You can also see the name is free trial, so you are seeing what you're connected to. You can get the same if you are ever in doubt on which subscription you're connected to. You can always do get-azure subscription using the tab here to autocomplete again. And as you can see, well, this is actually giving me a different information. Just give me a moment here to clean this up. Okay, so I just cleaned everything up. What happened was that I had a connection through an account to the subscription before. So we are going to go back to that import Azure publish settings file. I'm going to just rerun this again. I'm not going to download it. It's already downloaded. So I'm going to use the same file to connect back. And we press enter. And what this will do, it will go and connect to the subscription once again. And I'm going to go ahead and run the command get Azure subscription to actually see the subscription it's connected to. As you can see, it's connected to the same ID, free trial. It actually has the default account here. So anytime you're confused which account you're connected to, this is the commandlet that's going to help you, is the get Azure subscription. This is very important that you are connected to the right subscription, because PowerShell is very powerful, and the things that you can do over here may not give you enough prompts, or it might not have enough check and balance in place if you're running a script that you have written. So you want to always make sure that you are connected to the right subscription before actually running commandlets that actually make a lot of difference. So we are now connected using the certificate method to your subscription. The other thing I wanted to show you over here is that when you go to your site and you go to your settings in the management portal, you can actually see the management certificates here, and this will always match. As you can see, the DC7D, you can actually see that here as well, that it matches C70. Actually, we are on C703F, so that means this is the one we are connected to. This is the certificate. So these certificates actually need to match for your Azure PowerShell to connect to this subscription. And this is valid as long as the certificate itself is valid, because if the certificate was not valid, you'd not be able to connect. So as you can see that this expires in 2016 and it's 2015 right now, so that's why it's not expired, and these are valid certificates that you're connected to. And you can always, of course, upload your management certificate here, but these are the ones that are already provided. So we haven't really done anything different or new here besides connecting to the subscription. So this was the certificate method to connect, and you can actually right now run commandlets from here that would provide you the information that you have in your subscription. So for example, we had a virtual machine created. So if you went ahead and actually run the commandlet get Azure VM, what this would do is, since it's connected to your subscription right now, it would actually show you the name of the VM that you have connected. You have on your subscription. This is no different for you to come over here to the virtual machines, and you can see this is the same name. So technically you are doing the same thing that management portal can do. Obviously, you can do a lot more from here. You can find the status of your Azure VM. You can find a lot of information. So we can actually do a format list here. And you can see there's a lot of information that you can get by using PowerShell. So as far as the PowerShell connection is concerned, this is the subscription method of connecting to your management portal. What we are going to do right now is we are going to remove the Azure subscription, and what it will do is it will essentially make your PowerShell console forget the connection you're connected to. So we are going to do remove Azure subscription, and it's actually asking for the subscription name, and we remember the subscription name was free trial, so I'm going to get that information from there and put that in here. It's going to confirm with you that if you really want to remove the subscription, and you say yes. So this is not really removing your subscription from your Azure account. What it's doing is it's telling Azure to remove any subscriptions. So now your Azure is really not connected, Azure PowerShell is not really connected to any subscription. And the way you verify that is the same commandlet, get Azure subscription. And when you click on that, nothing shows up. It means that Azure does not know right now who the subscription is. So if you run something like get Azure VM, it's not really connecting to any subscription, and it will give you the error that no current subscription has been designated. So you have nothing loaded to the PowerShell here. So the next method that we are going to use to connect to the subscription is actually signing into Azure account. And the way you do that is you basically run the commandlet add Azure account. This is actually the preferred way from Microsoft right now to connect to, because you're not going to go and download a subscription file and import it and do all of that. All you have to do is click on add Azure account, and what it will do is it will actually prompt you for the account that the subscription is under. So for us, this account was cloudrangerblog@hotmail.com. My caps got hit somehow, but that's okay. What it will do is it will redirect you for the credentials, and you put in the credential. As you can see, it actually went ahead and connected to this account on Azure. And it's the same command that you check for your subscriptions. When you do get Azure subscription and hit enter, you'll be able to see that you are connected to the same subscription ID and the same name. So you know essentially that you are connected to your subscription. So we're going to run the same command, get Azure virtual machine, and we should be able to see the virtual machine that we had. So the commandlets here, doesn't matter which way you're connecting to, you are always connected to the same subscription and have the same commandlets available to you to run from your Windows Azure PowerShell. So this is the very basic connections of Azure PowerShell to your subscription, and that's how you really do it. As we go through other sessions, we are going to obviously talk about more templates, more cloud services, and we are going to talk about more PowerShell commandlets that you can use to actually create, modify, or delete or change your cloud services. So the next thing we are going to talk about is actually something called as Azure Service Management and Azure Resource Manager, the different modules that Azure has actually downloaded for you. So before we do that, we want to actually make Azure PowerShell once again disconnect from your subscription. And the way I'm going to do that is type this commandlet, remove Azure account, and it's going to ask for a name, and this name would be actually the default account, which is that's the one. So we're going to say just remove this account. It's going to confirm with you, click on yes, and basically that's it. So when you do get Azure subscription, at this point you're not going to see anything, so you know your Azure PowerShell is no longer connected to a subscription. So let's go back to our slides to actually talk about the modules that have been loaded to Azure PowerShell and talk about two separate modes that you can work in. So when we installed the Azure PowerShell a moment ago, three modules were actually installed. One is the Azure module, which is actually the Azure Service Management. And then we have the Azure Resource Manager and the Azure Profile. These are the three modules that were installed as part of the installation. By default, it doesn't matter you are logged in through the certificate method or you are using the Azure account method to connect to your subscription from the Azure PowerShell. You are always by default loaded with the Azure module or the Azure Service Management module. So you have a certain set of commandlets that are available for you for service management. Now, you cannot just go from one set of these modules to the other. So you cannot go from Azure Service Management to Azure Resource Manager. You have to use a commandlet from the PowerShell to actually switch you from the Service Management to the Resource Manager. I'm going to talk about a little bit of difference between these two modules and the commandlets that are available to you and not available to you, and what you can do or not in a demo. So the next thing you need to know is that there are two modes that you connect to from your Azure PowerShell. One is Azure Service Management, which is basically when you are loaded with Azure modules. And then you have the Azure Resource Manager mode when you are loaded with the Azure Resource Manager modules. The subscriptions connection from Azure PowerShell, you can only use Azure Service Management mode when you are connected to the certificate method. You cannot run the Azure Resource Manager mode when you are using the certificate method to connect to your subscription. If you're using the Azure account method to connect to your subscription, you can go to both modes. So that's why Microsoft kind of prefers that you use the Active Directory method or the Azure AD method to connect to the account to have both these modes available to you. Now, the distinction is that even if you are connected with the Azure account method rather than the certificate method, you are still connected. I mean, you still have the Azure Service Management module commandlets loaded for you. You do not have the Resource Manager that you will still have to switch. And obviously, this would make much more sense when we are going through a demo. So let's go back to our client, and I'm going to show you the differences and how you are logged in and how to find out where you are. Okay, we are back to our Azure console here. So we are going to use the certificate method once again. So we know that we already have the certificate file. So the commandlet here is import Azure published settings file, as you know. And we are going to go to our same directory and we're going to get the published setting file. So we are creating again the connection from the Azure console to your subscription through the certificate method. And we are going to run the same commandlet get Azure subscription to actually see which subscription we have. So I'm going to copy this information to the notepad here. And we are going to call this the cert method, and I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to also use the account method right now and get this information. So the way we will use the account method is first to actually disconnect from the subscription, and the way we do that is to remove Azure subscription, and it's going to ask for subscription name. Give that name here, confirm. That's done. So if you do get Azure subscription, we should not have anything. Let's connect through the account method, and the way we do that once again is add Azure account. Should be very simple. It should prompt us for our account and credentials once again. You're obviously going to put your account over here. Putting in our credentials, and we are connected. We are going to get the subscription once again. So I'm going to get this subscription info, copy that, and this is going to be the account method. If I can type. I want to show you subtle differences here. So when we connect it through the certificate method, you can see the subscription ID and the subscription name, which correlates to the subscription we actually have at the management portal here. So we know that's the correct subscription. It doesn't matter which way we are connecting, these values of this two will always be the same because you are connecting to the same subscription after all. But this is the stuff I was talking about earlier, the supported modes. When you are connecting through the certificate method, the only mode that you have is the service management. When you're connected through the account method, you are actually supported for both methods, the service management and the resource manager. And there are subtle differences between these two modes on what you can do and what you cannot do, and I'll demonstrate that. Before that, you have to remember, doesn't matter which method you are connected with, you always first have the Azure Service Management, which is the default mode. So it doesn't matter which mode you are in. So to move to the Resource Manager mode, first of all, you have to be connected with the account method, and then you have to pass a commandlet, run a commandlet to actually get to the Resource Manager. So let's go for a quick demo on first showing that how using the cert method you cannot go to this mode. So we are going to remove the account from here first, and it's going to ask us for a name, and the name is going to be the account name. So I'm going to put that here, click on yes, done. So let's go ahead and use our certificate method to get in, and we know the way to connect using the certificate method is to actually import the file. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Get subscription, Azure subscription. Okay, so let's go to the mode where we can actually get to the resource manager, and the commandlet for that is switch Azure mode. You put the name, and the name is going to be, like I said, by default you are always on Azure Service Management, so we want to go to Azure Resource Manager. So I'm going to put that as a parameter here, switch Azure mode, name Azure Resource Manager. As soon as we click that, you'll see, or press enter there, you'll see that it's actually importing the commandlets that are there for the Resource Manager module. So there is a commandlet here that's only available to this. So certain commandlets are going to still be same. So for example, if you do get Azure subscription, you're still going to get that, even if we sort of unloaded the other Azure or the service management mode. But let's run a commandlet that's only available to the Azure Resource Manager mode and see if we can run it. So we have a commandlet here that is get Azure Resource gallery, actually group gallery template. This is a very specific commandlet that's only available to the Azure Resource Manager. So we are now connected through the certificate method. Where did it go? Okay, certificate method, and we know that even though we were able to load this module here, we know that we won't be able to run any commandlets just because we are using the certificate method. So technically, when we run this commandlet, even though the modules have loaded these commandlets, it's actually not going to work. Actually, looks like it worked because we probably have the Azure account connected yet. Let's see. And I just realized that worked because that commandlet is actually static information. Let's try another real commandlet, get Azure resource, and see if that works. Okay, that's actually correct. Yeah. So since we're using the certificate method, as you can see, it says authentication failed, authorization header is not present. And the reason the get Azure resource is not working because it's a commandlet that belongs to the Azure Resource Manager module, and certificate method does not support that. So the only way this get Azure resource commandlet was going to work is if you are in the account method. So the way we are going to do that is we are going to actually go back to the mode, switch Azure mode, and we are going to go to name Azure Service Management. Here actually, once you load, if you go to get Azure resource, you'll see that the term, so it cannot even find this commandlet. So it actually dumps that module completely. And what we are going to do is remove the Azure subscription as well. So the subscription name was, let's take it from here, free trial. I think we can type that. Okay, so if we do a get Azure subscription, right now there shouldn't be anything. Cool. Now we are going to use the count method to connect in. I forget to type account all the time. Add Azure account. Ranger blog. And we're going to log into our account real quick. Take a little bit of time here. Okay. Now that's loaded. Let's go ahead and check for the subscription. Okay, we have the subscription. So the thing that we did is that we know that by default doesn't matter if you are using the count method. By default, Azure Service Management is the modules that's loaded. So we have to switch the mode, and we are going to use the command switch Azure mode, and we are going to switch to the resource manager. So that's what we will use. And this time when we use get Azure resource, we should not get an error. I know we probably have some resources that were created when we created our virtual machine and resources. As you can see, the commandlet worked. So what I'm basically trying to get at here is that when you're using the cert method, you will not be able to get to the Azure Resource Manager mode. As you can see from the supported mode, when you load the subscription by get Azure subscription, it shows that that mode is not supported. And it's definitely supported when you're using the account method. And account method, even though when you are in certificate method over here and you are trying to load the Azure Resource Manager, you are able to load that, but you are not able to run the commandlets because it gives you that authentication error. And this is very important for if you're going to attempt your certification exam, because it's something that's mentioned that needs to be covered. Now, let's see. Since we are already here, let's change the Azure mode a little bit. And I want to go over to the service management module over here and run a couple of commandlets. So we have covered how to connect to the subscriptions using two methods. One was the certificate, one was the account. We have showed both modes and which method can get to which modes. Once that is behind you, you can get into the regular commandlets that can be used from PowerShell. Doesn't matter which mode you are in, because these are really all service management related. So one commandlet that we had run earlier was that get Azure VM. So it basically shows you are interacting with the virtual machine. So we can do another one. Since we created a storage account, we can do get Azure storage account. We know that we had created one. So that's the one we had created, the Cloud Ranger 5000. And as you can see, it actually shows a bunch of details about that. And there was another one that was created here, storage account. It's a random alphanumeric, and this was created when we quick created the VM. So what happened was that it created this storage account to load the virtual machine's hard drive in here. You can actually go to storage and see that there are two accounts, and that's exactly what it's showing us over here. You know what? I'm going to do something really cool right now and show you. If you want to see all the commandlets, there is obviously an MSDN article which has all the information of all the commandlets, but you can create your own one real quick. And I'm pretty sure if some of you are really familiar with Windows PowerShell, you probably have already tried that out. So there is a command called get command, and what we are going to do is get all the commands of the module Azure. Remember that this was one of the modules that we had. So I'm going to get help for all the commandlets for this module. I'm going to type that and only get the name and synopsis. I do not want the entire thing. That will be a whole lot. And let's actually see all the commandlets that you have. It's trying to update the help, which is fine. I didn't expect it to do that right now, but it's updating all the commandlet help files. So this will just be a moment here. It actually went and updated all the help files, and it does that the very first time you run get help. I wasn't expecting that at this time, but we'll just go ahead and try to run that commandlet again. And as you can see, it's showing all the Azure modules, commandlets, and their synopsis here. It's a little hard to read, so I've got another idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Looks like it will require a little bit of wrapping, and I'm going to save that in a file. So what will happen is that you can actually take this offline and read that. So let's put that in our temp folder. And what's happening is right now it's taking all the name of the commandlets and the synopsis, so basically telling you a little bit details on that and saving it to a file here. So technically you can actually see all the commandlets here. So if we look at get Azure VM, this is the one we have been running for a while. You can see what this commandlet does. It retrieves information from one or more Microsoft Azure virtual machines. So this is a pretty neat trick to actually get all the commands you can see here. And you know that these are part of the Azure module, so these are all the commandlets that are available to you from Azure PowerShell console. I'm actually curious to do something else. I'm going to take this command and see how many commandlets are there. So there are about 509 commandlets that are related to Azure, as you can see. And that's pretty neat. 509 commandlets. I'm pretty sure they keep changing as Microsoft adds more services and deprecates others or things like that. So that's one cool way of doing it. So the last thing I want to do is actually show you some scripts that I had written. I actually have a script here that goes and removes all the subscriptions from your Windows PowerShell. So before, for example, I end the session, or before you want to do anything in PowerShell, you probably want to have a script like this that goes and pretty much removes it. So over here, what's happening is basically I'm going and running the get Azure account to see which account it's connected to. So if you do get Azure account, you can see the account that you're connected to for the subscription. I am pretty much going through all of that and removing that. So that means that you're sort of logging off. And here I'm doing the get Azure subscription. So if you're using the subscription method, it's going to do that and remove the subscription as well. So if I run this, doesn't matter you're using the subscription, or doesn't matter you're using the, you are using the certificate method, or doesn't matter you're using the accounts method, it's going to just pretty much log you off everything. The other one I wanted to show is a small script. What this script does is that I'm going to get all the VMs that are there and get the name and status of that. And the other one is I'm going to get all the storage accounts and then and just pretty much print out the names. So if we run this, so what I'm trying to show you with this script is that the different things that you can actually do with PowerShell scripting and Azure PowerShell and mix it up together and automate tasks. So you could literally have a PowerShell script that would go and create a virtual machine for you, create a storage account for you. Essentially what we had done over here in the beginning of the session, create the virtual machine and the cloud services and storage accounts. You can script the whole thing, and this is pretty good when we are trying to do something like a development lab, or you're trying to run something for testing. It's a pretty nifty thing to do. For example, here we ran that and we can see that it actually went and got our VM and its name and all the storage account names. So if I want to just run that, I can see that it'll get the storage names here, storage account names here. So as we go through more sessions, we are going to learn them first in the management portal, and at the same time I'm going to actually make it a point to do it in Azure PowerShell as well, so you can understand that you can use either to do it. And obviously scripting makes more sense if you're going to do this on a regular basis, or you want to run a large task together to do it. So that pretty much concludes our session. I do want to go back to our slide to mention one thing. I kept saying that there are two modes. One is Azure Service Management and one is Azure Resource Manager. I did not want to get into too much details, but just before I'm going to end the session, so the service management is basically everything, all the services, all the resources, individual resources that you can use from PowerShell, like get Azure VM. It went and targeted a particular resource and did that. It's no different from how you do it from the management portal. With Azure Resource Manager, you actually have access to what Microsoft now calls the Resource Manager, where you can take multiple services and create a pool of resource. So for example, if you are going to publish a cloud application that has requirement for websites and database and database servers, storage accounts, you can actually make them together part of a single resource. And rather than working on individual components or individual services, you can pass commands, or you can configure the entire resource to do the entire thing. I do not want to go into too much details of that at this point. We will be covering an entire session where you will be doing this, but just to let you know why these two modes are required. Okay, so as usual, this brings us to the end of the session, and I have the same details. Our training site is at cloudranger.net Azure-training. Our YouTube channel is at Cloud Ranger Network. Twitter handle is at Cloud Ranger Blog. We're on Google+. And you can get to me at sean@cloudranger.net as well if you have any very specific private question that you want to ask regarding Azure Cloud or anything else. Obviously, I would prefer that you put comments in the comment section, both in the blog site if you're visiting from there or on the YouTube channel. That way it's helpful for others as well. We are trying to, well, at least I'm trying to get these sessions out as rapidly as possible. Obviously, there are time constraints with other commitments. I'm trying to also make sure that I have enough content that would be beneficial for you to get started if you are completely new to this. So this ends our session for today. Thank you for viewing, and do share the resources with others, and do let me know how I'm doing as well through comments or email. Thank you.